Welcome. I have a short hip-focused exploration today to help you figure out some things that might be going on when your legs are moving around in your hip joints. And for this practice, if you have a yoga strap, grab a yoga strap and go ahead and make a loop out of it. If you need to pause the video in order to get that loop happening, go ahead and do that. And if you don't have a strap, you could use a belt or a dog leash or a bathrobe tie, something like that. And you're going to tie it into a loop. And you're going to want that loop to be about big enough that when you put it around the outside of your legs come out so your knees are about lined up with the middle of your hips. Doesn't have to be perfect, all right? So we're looking for your legs not to angle outward too far from the hip joints, but definitely doesn't have to be precise. You also might use a block at some point in this practice, but if you don't have that, don't worry about it. You definitely can work without it. Like any practice, it's really important here to pay attention to how your body feels. Don't do anything that moves you into places where your pain is increasing unless you've been guided to do that by someone who knows your medical situation. So we're going to start by lying down. Does not have to be on the floor. With your knees bent and your feet planted. And take a moment to get settled. Ideally, we're going to have a little bit of space underneath your low back, but your low back doesn't have to be really arched off the floor. There's just a little bit of space under the spine, right around the low back area. Sometimes we get the habit of stepping the feet really close to the sitting bones. Sometimes that's cute in yoga classes. I'm going to suggest that you experiment with taking your feet a little bit further away. We still want to feel stable and connected to the floor through the feet, but we also want to have some space and comfort around the knee joints, around the hip joints, around the low back. So go ahead and step your feet a little further away if that feels okay for you. Just taking a moment here to feel how things are. And then the first thing we're going to do, if you're comfortable doing so, is take your hands right into the hip creases in the fronts of your hips. And then you're just going to lift one foot off the floor at a time and place it back down. And if you're able to press your hand into the crease in the front of your hips, and we're really looking for the front of the hip, not so much around into the groin. You should be able to feel some muscles kick on there in the front of the hip. Might feel kind of cordy in the front of your hips there. Now you might have tone there all the time. That's totally fine. But see if you can get a sense of, okay, when I lift my legs up off the ground, what happens there in the front of the hips? So that's where you want to be feeling as we go through this movement. If you're not able to feel anything, no worries. Continue on with the practice with some awareness of what's going on in that area and just see what you learn. You can always reach out in the comments or through a message and get some more assistance with this if you like. So you're going to take your loop and you're going to place it around your legs. Maybe a little bit more towards the knees, but in the middle of the thighs, not all the way down around the hips. And you're going to come back into this starting position, very similar starting position to where you were before. You're going to tighten that strap up so that your legs more or less look like they come straight up from the hips. You're going to bring your hands into that area where you felt that crease there. And then you're going to take your knees away from each other here and just feeling into the hip. Notice if you feel any of that engagement in the front of the hip as you take your knees wide. Sometimes it will happen as you press out into the strap. Sometimes it will happen as you hold that pressing out. Over a period of time, you'll start to feel those muscles in the front of the hip kick on. So you're just going to see if that happens. No problem if it doesn't. No problem if you're not sure. Some of you are going to feel immediately one or both sides kick out as you're taking your legs out to the side, and that's interesting because these muscles do this job. They bring your knees in towards your body. They do not generally take your knees wide, but sometimes they get a little extra helpful. They get involved in this movement as well. So if that's the case, you might practice pressing your legs slowly and gently out, only so far as these muscles in the front of the hips don't need to get involved. So that might be where you're working, if that's something that's happening for you. For me, I've worked on this a lot, so there's not much going on when I bring the strap in. That's great. I'm going to put that strap aside. And then we're going to move on to another exploration. So again, you can bring your hands into the front of the hips, same starting position with the legs. Now we're going to slowly and mindfully take the knees away from each other towards the sides and back up to center. Now you notice my feet are not sliding into touch. I'm keeping my feet where they are. I'm allowing myself to rock onto the outer edges of the feet, but I'm continuing to keep a little space between my feet as I go. And I'm still feeling into the front of the hip. So if you're feeling some engagement there as your knees come out to the side, that's interesting. For me, my right side tends to kick on as I come out a little bit further into this shape. So I'm going to go only so far as I don't feel that happen. If you're either not feeling anything in the front of the hip, or you don't want to, or you can't feel the front of the hip, then you're just going to move the knees out to the side and back in, paying attention to how this movement feels. So first and foremost, you're moving in a range that doesn't increase your symptoms. Secondly, we're going to try to keep your pelvis nice and still, your low back nice and still, as you move your legs. So that we're really just feeling your legs moving at the hip. Your feet are going to follow the legs because they're attached to the bottom. Everything above, pelvis and above, should be pretty quiet and still. And if it's not, that's interesting to explore maybe what's going on. Like, why are those parts of the body getting involved? So you feel whatever you feel. For me, I'm getting some engagement on that right side today, so that's interesting. The next thing we're going to do is take your block if you have one. If you don't have one, you're just going to use your hand. You're going to place that block on the front of the right thigh. And then you're going to lift your right thigh up so it's more vertical. And you're going to press the knee into the block and the block into the right leg. And you're just going to see what happens as you do that. So it's fine to get engagement through the front of the hip. We're intending that here. We do want the left side to be able to stay pretty relaxed as we're pressing on the right. So I know the first thing my body wants to do is kick the left side on. I'm going to let that left side stay pretty soft. I am going to get some work through the front of the right leg, maybe a little bit of work through the side body on the right, maybe some work, probably some work in the right arm. I'm just going to hold this at a level of effort where I can maintain that relaxation on the left side and hold this for a little while. Just see what happens as I hold. Then I'm going to release. I'm going to let everything relax. I'm going to notice what happens as I relax, because sometimes that's where we notice, ooh, something got a little bit lopsided, or something changed when I relax. That can be interesting to notice. And then we'll come to the other side. So we're going to put that block on the left leg. You're going to bring the left leg up so the thigh bone's about 90 degrees. And then you're going to see if you can find a level of effort where you're pressing the thigh into the block back into the thigh. Some work is maybe happening on the left side, but the right side is staying relaxed. And then we're going to hold that again. So you're finding a level of effort that you can hold for at least 20 seconds. And just seeing how it feels to sustain what starts to happen as you get tired. Are you able to maintain the level of effort that you started out with? And are you able to keep the right side relaxed? When you're ready, you can release that. We're going to put the block out to the side again. Let everything relax for a minute. So take a moment to just let everything reset. Bring your hands into the fronts of those hip creases again. And then take your legs out to the side into this butterfly movement. And just see if there's any difference now after you did that block press. Is there a difference in how the fronts of your hips feel as you're going side to side? So for me, the right hip has stopped getting so involved. As I go out to the side here, it's staying pretty soft and relaxed, as is the left. So the front of the hip has stopped getting involved where it doesn't need to be involved as I take the knees out to the side. So that's fun to notice, right? Whenever we notice change, that helps let us know what the different practices and poses are doing for us, and that's really valuable to know. Okay. So once you're finished with this practice, you might give yourself a chance to rest. When you're ready, feel free to go on with the rest of your day. Notice how it feels to sit up, to stand up, to walk around after doing that little bit of work in the hips. And if you notice anything interesting or you have some questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Take really good care.